The connection between the Illyrians and the Hellenes is not just a theory but a fact based on linguistic, cultural, genetic and historical evidence. Let the facts speak for themselves. The Hellenes, their forgotten origins in the mountains of Illyria. The esteemed historian John Bagnell Bury, a professor of ancient history at the University of Cambridge, provides a crucial historical foundation for this discussion. In his monumental work, A History of Greece to the Death of Alexander the Great, Bury states unequivocally, we would fain go back still further and visit them in their older, unknown and forgotten home among the mountains of Illyria. This declaration is not a mere suggestion of cultural influence, but a direct assertion that the early Hellenes originated in Illyria's mountainous regions before migrating southward. Bury repeatedly emphasizes that the Illyrians were the earliest known inhabitants of the Balkans, while the Hellenes arrived later, migrating from Illyria into modern Greece. This places the Illyrians, whose direct descendants are the Albanians, at the center of ancient history. His rigorous scholarly work, supported by archaeological, literary and historical evidence, further reinforces this claim. A map in his book illustrates the migration of Hellenic tribes from Illyria through Thessaly to the Aegean, demonstrating the central role of Illyria in early Greek history. The credibility of the source. John Bagnell Bury was not an amateur theorist, he was a distinguished historian at one of the world's leading academic institutions, the University of Cambridge. His work is celebrated for its meticulous analysis and remains a cornerstone in the study of antiquity. His research confirms that the Hellenes were originally Illyrians who migrated south, leaving behind their ancestral homeland in Illyria. This forgotten history reaffirms the direct connection between Illyrians and Hellenes. Source: A History of Greece to the Death of Alexander the Great, p. 5. The sun worship of Illyrians and Hellenes. The Illyrians worshipped the sun and the star, as seen in Illyrian stelae and coins, which frequently feature solar symbols. A striking example is the Vergina Sun, used by the ancient Macedonians, which closely resembles Illyrian and Thracian solar depictions. The Hellenes also worshipped the sun, particularly through Helios, later evolving into Apollo Phoebus, the bringer of light. This deeply rooted sun worship confirms a shared cultural foundation between the Illyrians and the Hellenes. Il, as the name origin of the Illyrians. The Albanian word Il means starlight sun. The Illyrians derived their name from this concept, Illeri. Illyri follows a logical linguistic development. This proves that the Illyrians identified themselves as those of the light, or the luminous ones. Their deep reverence for light and the sun is reflected in their symbols and religious practices. Hellene, as a derivation of Ylleri. Ancient Greek contains multiple words for light and radiance, suggesting a link to Hellene Elios, Helios, equal sign sun phenos, phenos, equal sign shining radiant lampros, lampros, equal sign bright brilliant lukos, lukos, equal sign white luminous. The transition from Hellene is phonetically and linguistically explainable. Historical records confirm that early Greeks adopted Pelasgian, Phrygian and Illyrian words into their language. DNA and genetic continuity of Albanians. Genetic studies proved that modern Albanians have the strongest genetic continuity with the ancient Illyrians. There is no evidence of any mass migration of a foreign population that could have replaced the Illyrians. Illyrian DNA markers match the oldest discovered burials in the Balkans, forming an unbroken genetic line from antiquity to today. This genetic continuity proves that Albanians are the direct descendants of the Illyrians. The term Hellene originates from the Illyrian word Ylleri. This proves that the Greeks were originally a cultural offshoot of the Illyrians. Conclusion: a common ethnic origin. The linguistic connection Ylleri Illyri Illyri Hellene is linguistically and historically justified. Sun worship is a central cultural element of both Illyrians and Hellenes, confirming their shared heritage. Genetic evidence indisputably shows that Albanians, Illyrians, have continuously lived in the same region since antiquity, with no external influences disrupting the Illyrian lineage. The Hellenes were not a completely distinct ethnic group, but a cultural offshoot or amalgamation of Illyrian groups that later identified as Greeks. Conclusion: the Hellenes were originally Illyrians. The Hellenes directly descend from the Illyrians. Their language, culture and religion evolved from Illyrian roots. The linguistic development from Ylleri to Hellene explains the strong connection between Illyrians and Greeks. John Bagnell Bury, one of the most respected historians, confirms that the Hellenes originated in the mountains of Illyria before migrating south. His work is supported by historical, linguistic and genetic evidence, leaving no doubt about the true origins of the Hellenes. There is no other logical explanation. The genetic, linguistic and cultural evidence indisputably confirms that the Hellenes did not emerge as an independent people, but as a continuation of Illyrian tribes. History must be rewritten.